we're very, very lucky to be joined by three doctors and Ben, but, you've seen Ben up here already. And I'd like to introduce our doctors. We've got Dr. Matt Clifford, Dr. Mark Colson and Dr. Jamie Chu. Now, of course, you've seen Jamie also earlier. So I won't go into his IT entrepreneurship when I introduce him. So, you've heard from him this morning. Now, Matt I'll introduce first, and what a background. So Matt's an interventional radiologist who practices both publicly and privately, which I think is a great perspective to have that mix of public and private for our panel. You're at Perth Children's Hospital and Hollywood Private Hospital, and very well qualified. And I'm going to embarrass Matt by pulling out. I do like to make mentions of particular things, and I noticed that, Matt, you've achieved European Board of Interventional Radiology certification, and in 2024 actually you got the Certificate of Distinction awarded to the top two candidates worldwide. I mean, that's amazing. So thank you very much for giving up your time today. Sitting next to Matt is Dr. Mark Colson. And Mark is an anaesthetist in full-time private practice in Geelong. So, again, a different perspective there, the full-time private practice. And I'm actually going to use some of Mark's words here. I love it. Mark has worked on every continent except 4. I love that. And I thought what was particularly interesting as well is that you've had first-hand experience of UX managed care. And in Mark's words, again, has galvanised him to serve on the Australian Society of Anaesthetists Economics Advisory Committee for over 20 years, which is amazing. And I quote, "in the hope of avoiding any such nightmare being repeated in Australia." So great to have you on board for this as well. Now, Jamie, in addition to the IT, is an ophthalmologist and with over 15 years of experience working in private practices in both rural and urban. So I think that's a great to have that rural experience as well up on the stage is fabulous. And I see you did Lions Outback Vision, which must have been amazing for over 5 years. And I see grew up in the country as well. So great perspective there. And of course, Ben, the brains behind MedBiz and the origin of our wonderful community that we have. Now, I'm going to stop talking, you'll be pleased to hear. I'm going to start with Matt by asking a very general question about any frustrations or challenges that you've found in private practice that you'd like to share.
Okay. Thanks for inviting me as well. Being up here, I still feel like a bit of a fraud being amongst these jargonauts. But anyway, so in terms of the challenges, I guess there are some that are quite specific to my field, the interventional radiology. I think the fact that I think we are not very well known amongst, the general population don't know what we do. I think a lot of doctors don't know what an interventional radiologist is. I was one of them before I started radiology training. I didn't know what an interventional radiologist was. And so I think just, you can't have people coming to you with their problems that you can help them with unless they know what you can do. So that's been, I think, specific to IR is just getting the word out there about what we can and do. I think the other things have just been the sort of general everyday. I think everyone kind of struggles with them in a little bit, which is that you always have to step out of public into private, setting up private. There's always that initial period of time, which is a growing period where you've got those overheads, where you've got that those sort of fixed costs, and you need to keep your 1 foot in, or want to keep your 1 foot in the public, but you're basically paying the costs, either monetary or in terms of all the development, personal development, all these emails that you don't read of the qualifications you're supposed to do, and sensitivity trainings that I've never managed to do, of 2 different systems. And the more workplaces you have, the more cost you're sort of spreading around. But I've found that I guess there's one other thing as well, is that I found my financial literacy is very poor. I've done spent 20 years learning how to be a good doctor, and I don't remember one lecture on billings. I mean, it might have been there, but I don't remember it. One lecture on business, what the difference is between a sole tradership and a company. And we're all expected to then, once you finish your specialisation, you just kind of left into the world with and my only knowledge of finance is year 10 economics. So it's been a really steep learning curve for me, that financial side.
A great answer. I think you can see, really, Ben, that's where you picked up, I guess, really your wife being the origin of that. And, it's hard to be financially literate when your focus is on the medicine. But I'll ask the same question. I'll pass the microphone down to you, Matt.
What was the question again? Oh, yes, the challenges in private practice. So, look, just to pick up on your introduction, I mean, I've been called a lot of things, but invited experts, not on that list, I have to say, until today. So that was nice. I think I was described as an invited expert. So, yes, I've worked in North America and England. So I've seen both types of health systems. I've seen a pure public system. That's a diabolical nightmare. And I've seen a pure private system in the US. That's even worse. And so I think we have to... One of the things we all have to cherish. Forgive me, I'm used to speaking to anaesthetists, so I have to forgive me if I'm using small words and short sentences. But you have to remember that Australia, I think, what makes it's been said we've got the best health system in the world. I think that's true. I very much think it's true, and I think the reason for that is precisely because we have this healthy balance of public and private. We have the two. It waxes and wanes a bit, but it's about 50-50 public and private. And that creates... a cynic once said to me, well, the reason that creates such a great health system is because in the private system you get over-servicing, and in the public system you get under-servicing. So you've got a healthy balance of under and over-servicing, but I think there's actually more to it than that. I think what actually is going on is that the two systems are in competition with each other, especially right now for staff and resources. And so if the public system goes to crap, we all have the option of going into private and vice versa. And for that reason, I say to all of you who might be looking to go into private practice or even starting your practice in any sense, I say to you, you have to cherish both systems. So if you're going into private, cherish the public system and vice versa, and all those people who work in it. As far as the challenges, I think so certainly in anaesthetics, the greatest challenge is definitely just and it probably is all specialties really, is just understanding private billing, the vagaries of rules of private, how we bill private health insurers. And I think you can throw up your hands and say it's all too hard. I'm going to phone Ben and join Zento. It can be overwhelming, and a lot of people just choose. There's a spectrum of interest in the whole topic. Some people just want to do their work and let someone else take care of all of that. Other people, I guess I'm at this end of the spectrum, having been on the EAC for not quite 20 years, but something like that. I was on the Public Practice Advisory Committee before that, but other people take a real interest in it, and on that committee, we've spent most of those 20 years fighting government to preserve Medicare funding of our specialty. And if in your own specialties, if you have a chance to join committees that are doing that stuff, that it's very important. But I think at the end of the day, we've got to remember who's really important here. And in private practice, you're only as good as your reputation, and your reputation is really what the patients think of you. It's also what the cleaner in the hospital ward thinks of you. That's more important than how many papers you've published and how much money you make, because at the end of the day, the patients care. They don't care how much you know; they want to know how much you care. There's a good quote for you. And so until they know how much, if they know how much you care, they don't really care about all the other stuff. And it's that reputation is what will springboard your financial success.
Yeah, that last point's interesting. I mean, that bears out in the medico-legal world as well, often in terms of with medico-legal claims, communication is often at the very heart of claims. So that, you heard it with the private practice presentations about the importance of relationships. So I think that's really good advice. Oh, Jamie's got a microphone in his hand, which is great. Thanks, Ben. So I'll ask you the same question of sort of challenges you found.
Sure. I certainly don't have as much post-training experience as my colleagues here, but I have had a lot of experience because I was exposed to private practice before training. As some of you will know, in competitive, some specialties, it's difficult to join a training program. So with ophthalmology, I didn't have to, but I had the opportunity to work in private in rural country New South Wales. So I spent 2 years in Orange and Dubbo in an extremely busy ophthalmology clinic, and I started bottom up. I went in there and I was doing the visual acuity as an ophthalmic assessor. I learned how to use all the machines as a technician. I got slick at that. Then my supervisor, who was excellent, but he was a hard taskmaster, but I learned a lot. He slowly then taught me on the rest of the business, and I got very involved in that. We had day surgeries that we were running across 4 sites in country New South Wales, and I was a big part of the accreditation process for those, which was extremely onerous. And I was a very big part of how the billings worked. And probably the biggest message I would say is looking after staff, and the most difficult, one of the most difficult parts of running a practice is the human resources, and that is what I took away from that very early experience. And because I saw when the practice manager was replaced, and it was shambles. It was very difficult. It so much fell apart, and we all did our best. I was doing a bit of appointment bookings, and everyone was trying to pitch in. And that's something I always thought about as I went through my training and then into private practice coming out on the other end. Really, it's about the importance of looking after your internal customers, right? And then I extend that now to the AI business we've got now, and I'm trying to apply the same principle. Looking after your staff, right? This mentor said to me, he said, if you pay peanuts, Jamie, you get monkeys, right? And that's one aspect, but it's bigger than just financial remuneration. So that would be a big message I see, and I see that challenge when you lose that staff member that was doing a really good job. You're then going to have to find someone else. You're going to have to pay the time and resources to do the work, to train that new person, and then you have that person. And so I would say whenever you can avoid that, just really think about your internal customers and your human resources.
That's a good point to lead into Ben, because I think I announced earlier at the lectern that, I do sincerely say this, that Ben, if I was a practitioner, I'd have Zento, because to me then that becomes your problem, Ben, recruiting people. Now, am I right in thinking that since COVID times that human resources and recruiting has become much more difficult?
It's the recruitment since COVID has been through a few sort of cycles. I think to some extent, it feels a little bit like we're coming out the other end, but it certainly doesn't feel like pre-COVID, no. So, but in many ways, the fundamentals still apply, which is you're looking for good people with the right skills and the right soft skills and things like that. But candidates are very well informed now about what jobs to apply for and what jobs to avoid, and what the market rates are and things like that. So, the days of getting someone for under $30 an hour are long gone. And like what Jamie was saying, if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. If you pay your staff well, then you get good staff who stick around. And then not only do you have to pay them well, you also have to treat them well, look after them, and so on. One of the things that we get the benefit of in our team is that because all of our staff in the pool are part of a team and they come and go in different practices, they can call upon support from each other. And as a team, they can say, oh, you remember we had this patient with this doctor, or we had that experience with that doctor. It gives them a much more diversified experience and a much more of a support network than perhaps if you're a solo staff member working with a doctor. So I think that is something that our staff quite enjoy. And then training. It's a never-ending job, and making sure that staff are well-trained and well-equipped with the right tools to be able to do their job properly. And trying to make sure those little roadblocks are constantly removed out of their way so that they can get their job done.
Very good. Now, what I might do, I might just go to the audience as well. Is there anyone that's got any questions? We can pass the microphones around. Oh, actually, Caroline, have you got a microphone down there? Does anyone have any questions? Because we do have a whole lot of wealth of experience up here. Just while Caroline gets up, one question I always like to ask is, have you got any sort of general advice, particularly work-life balance? Because often when people move into private practice, that becomes more of an issue.
Yeah. Have I got advice on work-life balance? I don't know. I think it's. I mean, everyone's is different. I think I'm getting that. I'm learning that more over time, and that some people are miserable if they're not working all the time, and other people just would be happy on a yacht or, all day, every day, and never lifting a hand except to call the butler. Which would be nice, I guess, as well. But I think ultimately it's about understanding yourself and knowing what your balance is and then seeing if you can afford it as well. So I think for me, I don't know if this is oversharing, but my wife is a successful gynecologist and fertility specialist, so I don't have to work. And so I really did have that butler scenario, which I was thinking about doing, just being a handbag husband. But I sort of looked at what I love doing, and it's actually quite freeing to be able to do that. And I understand it's a very privileged position to be able to choose exactly how much you work and exactly where you want to work. So I guess my advice would be lucky and try and marry someone rich.
I love it. But Jamie, I'm not sure that would apply to you. Like, I think that's such a good point you make, Matt, about the fact that work-life balance is different for everyone. Jamie, am I right? I'm going out on a limb. I'd imagine you wouldn't like the butler service.
No, I like to be doing something all the time. I'm probably not the best person to talk about at the moment work-life because we're trying to build a startup company. but definitely, I think that what I would say is that I've gone down that path because it's really interesting to me and it is different. Like, I love doing ophthalmology still. I will always be a clinician, right? And this was a wonderful way to be able to use that, domain-specific knowledge to apply it in a different way in an area that I think is really exciting and contributory in a different way. And for me, that is a work-life balance, to be able to make that choice. And I would say that there are times in life where you think perhaps you don't have a choice, but you do. And it may, this isn't necessarily a path that a lot of people would do. I still have people coming up to me going, oh, geez, why are you not doing ophthalmology full time? I'm like, well, this is interesting. It's fun. I feel I can contribute. I know I can contribute because of the fact I'm an ophthalmologist. So I guess that's a part of the work life for me. Yeah.
What about you, Mark?
So it's a difficult question, I guess, a very individual thing, and I think that you only have to look around you to see what is it you aspire to in your own colleagues. And I think one of the things, certainly in private practice, you see a lot of aging private practitioners who are still extremely busy, and they keep delaying their retirement because they have nothing else in their life. And I look at those individuals, I think I'm determined not to be one of them. And but they've already screwed up their work-life balance. So you need to start early and to avoid becoming one of them, you need to start early. And what does that mean? Well, you've got to not let go of those. Most of us had interests before we started training in medicine. We have hobbies, and a lot of them, especially in private practice, it doesn't lend itself to. It's not amenable to great work-life balance, quite frankly. But you've got to make an effort to just say, Wednesday's my golf day, or it's my cycling day, or it's my whatever, my bonsai day. I'm just not working Wednesdays. And in fact, it used to be you would probably raise a few eyebrows saying that before COVID. But something has changed in the pandemic. Something has really changed. It's the whole work ethic. So People have no qualms now about just saying this, and it's actually it's not just COVID's over, but it's not changing back. There's been a permanent change in the whole work ethic. So I think work-life balance is going to largely look after itself going forward. I expect for the next generation. And as one of my colleagues said, why are we all working? Well, a lot of people are working, quite frankly, for money they don't actually need. So they've got plenty of money. They've got plenty enough money to retire, and yet they still keep working. And it's been said you just need to temper your greed and realise that you have a serious think about how many years have you got left, and how much. Think of all the things you could be doing, because as another saying goes, no one gets to the end of their career on their deathbed the end of their life on their deathbed and says, the one thing I wish I'd done more is work.
Yeah, great. Does anyone have any questions that Caroline can pass the microphone to?
Hi. When you guys started your very first private practice, just in terms of mindset, did you go into it with a gung-ho, no guts, no glory attitude, or more finding it scary, and how did you overcome it?
Me?
Well, I can answer. So I went into private practice in slightly unusual circumstances, in that I'd just been sacked by a public hospital. So I was actually sort of wondering about how I was going to put food on the table. So that does tend to focus your mind on this question. And I just thought I will do absolutely anything. I didn't care. I'll miss holidays. The family would go away on holidays without me because all my colleagues were away. So that was when there was a little bit of work would come my way because they're all away. So I just for a little while there, I just worked when everyone else was away, which meant I never took holidays in the school holidays anyway. That was my approach, and then gradually, fortunately, it slowly built up to the point where I could stop thinking like that. But that's an unusual way to start private practice. Most people would be more organised than I was, I would hope.
So for me, it was, I guess it was complex. One of them, about maybe 5 years before I finished my training, I saw about a procedure that I thought was great, that was just not happening. And I thought, I was trying to find out why it's not happening, and just couldn't really get an answer, except that no one was doing it. So I knew that I wanted to do that particular procedure. So given it wasn't really happening in public, I knew it was going to have to be private. So I knew that was where I was going to go. In terms of like how I felt about doing private, as we've sort of seen, luckily I have some of the pressures of life are not mine, which is good. But I guess managing my greed a little bit has helped with that. But the other thing has been that it is scary sometimes to look down, and I kind of think of it in the same way as when you're skiing or when you're doing whatever it is, you just look where you're going. You don't look at the trees or you go there. You don't look down or you fall. You just look where you're going. And provided you've got a good plan, you just, I think, keep looking at it.
I think, again, mine's probably a little bit not traditional, but I mean, the way I started out, I guess because I had a lot of early exposure to private practice and always was thinking about it along the way, I probably on average had a better idea of what was coming before compared to most of my colleagues. So I have taken it a lot slower, really. So I started out, for example, very involved in developing iScribe. But apart from that, I just started doing locums and just ease my way in, because I know that as you start, it's going to just accelerate more and more and more. And so I've been very consciously careful to not just jump in and book as many patients as I can and just, I know there's things you can do to really increase the number of patients you see or how busy you are. You can go to every single locum. You can go to all across the country. You could fill your schedule up. But for me, I've just been very conscious to slowly dial that up. And I guess I've tried to also be aware of I'm fortunate to be joining some people who I know are very good people, and it's a practice that fits me as well. And I think that starting off doing locums in different places can really give you an idea of, okay, does this seem to be a good fit? So that was advice that was always given to me about if you're thinking about joining a practice, try and see if you can do a locum initially, a couple of weeks even, and then you could even extend it to 6 months. And I know that's a way that a lot of my colleagues have done that as well. They've done it for 6 months or a year, and then if it's a good fit, then they can commit a little bit more. So that's kind of how I've approached it.
Ben, I wonder if you have the same experience that I do when it's often a time that I get new clients is when they're first entering private practice. And I must say, there is that level of sort of nervousness about it. And I have to get them to do a terrible thing, which is to predict what their private practice billings are. It's crystal ball stuff. I mean, fortunately, you can amend that as the course of the year goes by. But I have never seen a doctor underestimate their billings. Overestimate their billings, I should say. Oh, sorry to panic everyone over that. So, the usual thing is like, I don't know, maybe $25,000, $50,000 a year. And I think, yeah, it's probably going to be more than that, quite a bit more. And I have to tell you, it always is. And, there's always that level of nervousness, though. So, Ben, I don't know if you sort of see the same thing, that there's that underestimation at first.
I think the answer to that is somehow sort of specialty specific. Some specialties, based on the demand for that specialty and the number of people who are in that specialty, it can be as simple as getting the name out there and then they will come. We have pediatrician clients who every time they open a new session, it just books up, and that's, it's how many hours do you guys want to work? And for them, work-life balance, coming back to the earlier question, is an opportunity based on how you set up your practice and what you want in life, because you can choose in that scenario, how busy do I want to be? And that's a very fortunate position to be in. And subject, of course, to how you set your practice up, because depending on that will determine your fixed overheads and therefore how much you need to work and so on. Other specialties, it's not so easy. I mean, Matt and his friend and colleague Will are forging new ground with their specialty, which means that there is clearly a demand out there, but it's educating the people around them and educating the market about that means that it's not as simple as getting the name out there. But in time, so the snowball will take longer to grow, but it will grow. So I think how busy you want to be, the lifestyle thing, work-life balance, I think they're all interconnected and they're all related to the specialty, but doctors have a wonderful opportunity to, as payback for those 15 years, 20 years of training, to be able to start to think about those things on their own terms. Interestingly, Mark, about your comment about life post-COVID, I've had some people saying recently that with this new emphasis, if you like, on work-life balance, as it's sort of going through the population, it's changing the workforce availability or workforce capacity, because we don't have, if doctors are not willing to do the 70-hour weeks, and that's across all doctors, well, we have the same number of doctors, but they're all doing less work. And that, what does that mean is it for the population and the amount of surgeries that can get done? And, Roshan was saying that their ideal doctor is the one who works 70 hours a week, but what if there are no doctors who work like that anymore? What does that mean in terms of patients being able to access care? What does that mean in terms of how you set your fees? There's a range of knock-on effects from that.
Very relevant in the GP space, especially. I mean, I know in the 25 years that I've been in medical indemnity, when I first started, the amount of part-time GPs, it was pretty minimal. And now it just seems to be that the part-time GP is the norm. And as a result, I'm seeing a lot of overseas GPs coming in on visas because that shortage, it's massive. Does anyone else have any questions? How are we going for time? I've lost Caroline. We do have another question over here. How are we going for time, Caroline? Last question. And, you can always ask people around afterwards as well.
Oh, pressure. Last question. Better make it a good one. I was going to ask about team building and human resources, which is you touched on. And that comment Jamie made was around trying to manage your growth. I mean, that's perhaps one way of looking at work-life balance. But actually, the opportunity in private, I think, is just to grow, but simultaneously not kill yourself. So then it comes down to how do you surround yourself with a team that you trust and a team that you want to be part of, and to completely do it your way. And I think the opportunity, and perhaps we haven't really touched on this, is how do you foster that? How do you market yourself as the person that people want to be with and come into that private space? How do you pitch for that? I mean, part of it's around not paying peanuts, but actually, and providing training opportunities. But it's more than that, isn't it? And I'd just be interested to hear your comments on that.
Okay, very, very good question. Again, I guess I can speak from. I think a lot of it is just. Look, I try to approach life like this. Like people don't forget how you make them feel. That's one general comment, right? I'd say, and I think that just when you're dealing with, I think a real once again a very good advice I had very early on from some mentors is like you treat everyone the same. You treat every patient the same, whether they're a private or public patient. You treat them the same. You treat them like how you would treat. You'd want your family to be treated, and you extend that then to the staff around you, and then you extend that to those things. I think just magnify over time. That's just my small take on it. I can speak from building our company in the last year and a half. We've got 22 full-time staff now across the country, and I've been a big part of recruiting them and trying to build that sense of team morale. And I mean, for us, I know it may not apply to everyone here, but I mean, the getting everyone together for at the end of the year to a function where they could actually meet in person when people were a bit disconnected and not always working remotely. That was so important. And then that sort of interactions that everyone had. I actually made a spreadsheet of all the people who had not met in person yet. And I wanted to make that all green by the end of last year, and we did it. And so we flew people into Melbourne at our head office there. And then I can see that then people are having conversations after that this year, and it's just made their work so much more effective, and because they've met these people. And if you can take a snippet of that in a private practice, that's, I guess, you by giving yourself an opportunity to interact in a slightly different setting, then people see you in a different way. And I think that then they get to see another side of you, right? And then back to your original question, to make yourself want to be worked with, just more opportunities to show those different sides. We're all, we've all got non-work sides as well, and that's just my perspective.
There's actually a whole science. It's a very interesting question. There's actually a whole science of group size psychology or algorithms, if you like. And Roman emperors even picked up on this and said, well, if you have, if you want to be safe, you'll have 5 bodyguards. But if you want to be even safer, you'll have 10. But 15 is less safe, because by the time you get to 15, you're likely to have a couple of traitors in there. So it becomes less safe. So there's the whole science of group size. Bill Gates even found this when he was developing Windows. He was missing deadlines, developing software. He said the traditional business approach was you're running behind on your schedules, you throw more people at it. In fact, more people slows it down, because more people means you need more meetings, there's more communication, and in fact, it slows the whole thing down. Bill Gates took the opposite approach. He took half the team away and said, right, you guys finish this now. I don't care if you sleep at your desks, you finish this project. So when it comes to medical practices, there's actual real relevance here. And I think that there's this inexorable, just growth at all costs. The town's growing, the population's growing. We have to get bigger like they are. It's not necessarily true. And in fact, it does create some unanticipated. You can have let another anaesthetic or paediatric group form in the town. Once your group, I think, gets beyond about 10 or 15 is probably an optimum number. Once you get beyond that, a few things happen. The first thing that happens is you start to get factions forming, and you start to get warring between the factions. And I also think it impacts on the governance structure of the. You can't really have a truly democratic structure where 15 people. Once you get, say, 20 people in a room, say, let's all discuss this topic and decide, make a decision, it doesn't work because when you've got 20 people in a room, people are scared to speak freely. They're scared. They don't know what the next person's thinking. They don't want to offend anyone. And so all of a sudden the whole thing breaks down. Governance fails and no decision or bad decisions are made or worse still, no decisions are made. And so I think there's actually an optimum size for a private group. It's probably about somewhere between 10 and 15. And once you get past that, you're getting into the danger zone.
Well, I definitely don't have anything as highbrow and thought out as that to say. So, I honestly don't feel qualified to answer that. Look, I've spent I'm a radiologist. We spend 5 years of training plus specialists plus fellowships learning how to be unpersonable and how to make people, how to lose friends and alienate people is that 7-year training process. So I could just look at what I do and do the opposite. I think that's probably what I would say. No. I think, for me, I'm learning all this stuff on the fly. I think for me personally, it's in my early stage, it's partnering with someone who I'm trying to partner with Will Ormiston, and partnering with someone who you trust morally completely is very good. I mean, as much as one can. I think it's been very good for me, and it helps if they're excellent. And then looking to my mentors as well. People, like John Tibbles is the head of department at Charlie's, who he always takes. I remember this when I was a reg. He used to always take out when you shred the shredder. He would always empty the shredder box, and he's the head of department. He's been there for ages, and there's cleaners who haven't done it, and then there's residents who haven't done it, and registrars who haven't done it, and then there's like the consultants who haven't done it. But he never complained about it or anything like that, and just that humility of dealing with not even just cleaners or not just cleaners, not even cleaners, just in your everyday thing. No. You're not like checking your ego. I think it's something that I'm trying to make sure that I do. Because I think that strategy has been very effective for him. So partnering with good people and then checking your ego, that'll be my things.
So you said you had nothing to add, and that was excellent advice. That values concept, I think being with people with similar values, no matter what you're doing, whether you're a doctor or any other form of business, is so important. And I'll sort of like use that to lead into closing. I'm going to be passing over Ben to close, but you picking up on that values concept. Ben has really been the origin of putting together a group of people. You've heard from a lot of experts in different areas today, and the one uniting feature of this community that we've put together is that we all share the same values. And I can see Serena nodding in the back, who I referred to earlier, that the value of care and trying to help people, whether it's helping the doctors or doctors helping patients, really does unite everyone. So thank you, Ben, for being the brains behind MedBiz. I had someone earlier this morning say, I wish this MedBiz had been around 20 years ago when she actually started. She's nearing retirement. So thank you very much for putting everything together, and I'll hand over to you to close up.
Thanks, Robin. And that does bring us to the end of MedBiz 2025. And on behalf of Zento and the entire organising team, I would like to extend a sincere thank you to you, our attendees, for coming. Your engagement and willingness to invest your time today is what makes events like this worthwhile. And we hope you've gained some practical information and some new connections as well. I want to extend a huge thank you to our excellent presenters and my fellow panellists who've shared their knowledge and experiences throughout the day, both on stage and on the table discussions. Their contributions or your contributions were central to the program, and I hope you appreciate them. We couldn't have done this without the support of our sponsors, and thank you to our sponsors for backing this initiative, our gold sponsors and our silver sponsors. And thank you for helping us bring it to life. Behind the scenes, a tremendous amount of work goes into an event like this, and a special thank you, a big thank you to Caroline Gover for her tireless work putting it all together. And thank you, Robin, for being our MC and guiding us through the day and keeping us on track. Robin and Carolyn, your bell ringing has been very good. At Zento, we initiated MedBiz because we believe in supporting specialists, not just with services, but with access to the kind of knowledge that has been shared today. Seeing everyone to come together reinforces the value of this community and the importance of addressing the business aspects of private practice. We hope that the conversations continue beyond today. So thank you once again for coming. Please join us for the drinks out in the foyer, and we wish you all the best in your practices.